Julie Basale here, otherwise known as the New Mum's Nutritionist. I'm a very qualified nutritionist specialising in pre and postnatal nutrition. I'm 5 months off completing my doctorate and I'm the Head of Education for Fit College New Zealand. I'm a very skilled presenter specialising in areas central to women's well-being: hormones, metabolism, fat burning, and of course pre and postnatal nutrition. I've recently been in the New Zealand Herald and on 7 Sharp, one of our most popular news shows. I'm going to provide you with a demonstration of one of my recent presentations for the New Zealand Parent Centre, for which I have a number of presentations planned throughout the rest of the year. I'm a very passionate presenter and I've been to Filex this year, and it would be my total pleasure to present at the next Filex conference. I can promise you I will deliver an outstanding presentation.
Oh, well, Dad bods are so last month. We want to talk about mum bods. And no, not crazy. I gave birth 2 weeks ago and I already have abs again mum bods, but normal mum bods. Here's Erin Conroy.
I'm broken, I'm just in pyjamas all day, I've got boobs and I don't know how to use them, and I'm meant to know how to use them. You know, who am I and who is this child? You know, if I could save one woman from feeling like that, then I would.
One search for celeb post-baby bodies and you get, well, this. But it's time to learn a new word when it comes to a post-baby body.
Brutiful.
Yes, brutiful.
It's brutal and beautiful at the same time.
Good phrase.
Yeah.
To mother of two, Julie Bisley, it means the harsh reality of being a new mum and her motivation to be completely open about it.
I remember standing in the shower after giving birth and just looking at this belly that, you know, was soft and lumpy and massive, and I don't want to show people what it's really like, and I thought, again, you know, but I've got a chance to make a difference here.
So hubby got the camera out and she began to document her baby blues and her body. She's a mum and a health researcher. Before having kids of her own, she taught others about parenting. But all the books didn't make it easy.
If I struggle with all my knowledge of nutrition and activity and how the body works, imagine what other women must go through.
So she wrote and wrote, and now her blog has gone viral. Written about in Germany, read all over the world. At last count, nearly 2 million times.
I really didn't expect the response that I've got.
And because she's an expert in the area, time for Julie to hit us with some baby body facts.
Placenta's a hormone factory all on its own, and as soon as that's expelled, it takes with it all the hormones that have been pumping through your body for the last 9 months. And you're going to feel that. It's going to make you feel really sad. Your hormone, which makes you feel full, decreases, and your hormone, which makes you feel more hungry, actually increases.
So it's normal.
So it's normal. It's going to take time for your uterus to contract down. It's actually a physiological process where it muscularly contracts.
So from the woman who brought us Brutiful, you can read about the brutal, but all I can see right now is the plain beautiful.
What a brave and incredible thing to do. Good on you, Julie.
Well, thank you all for doing that. It's my dream and my total passion to build a global community of mums that help each other lead healthy, happy lives and support each other along the journey of motherhood. So now you've got a new friend, you can meet each other for coffee, or even better, text each other at 3 a.m. because they're the best kind of friends. Tonight, what I'm going to be talking to you about is a lot to do, sort of following on from my blog, around the body changes that occur after you give birth, because it's something that's largely not spoken about and yet affects us all very deeply and often quite personally. So I'm going to talk to you about the science and physiology behind the changes that happen after having a baby, sharing with you loads of practical tips how to nourish yourself from the inside out, which can make a real difference to these challenges, and of course sharing with you what I call the brutiful truth. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat things, because sugar, as you know, actually has very little nutritional value. It's not that great for you. Life with a newborn and that transition into motherhood is at times extremely challenging. Now, don't get me wrong, it's also incredible. Very little will compare to that moment when you first hold your child or first see them smile. And you know, I've got 2 boys and they are worth everything that I've fought for, but at the same time, it's also incredibly challenging. Sorry, I just need to flick the slides. I'm sort of standing on the wrong side. You know, today we live in a world where, you know, we're largely parenting on our own in some cases. We don't have the support of large extended families or even our immediate families. And that means some of the knowledge and skills that, you know, used to be passed down to us no longer are. And on the flip side, you know, we've got this world of social media, which has its positives, but at the same time we tend to be bombarded with lots of images and, you know, opinions about how we think things should be, and they tend to only show the beautiful side, put it that way. I did a Google search for, you know, mum with a newborn, and this was one of the first images that came up. You know, I think reality is just slightly different in some cases. Yeah, that's obviously from my blog. Sahan was a week old there. There's 2 reasons why I think it's important that we acknowledge that the newborn days are potentially going to be very challenging. The first is that by acknowledging it, it means that you can be prepared, okay? And by being prepared, I don't mean having your nursery painted or making sure that you've got the pram with the gold-rimmed reels. You know, those are very important, but when I say prepared, I mean prepared for some of the bigger issues, the things that are potentially going to challenge you. I've put a few up there, and I'm going to talk about a few tonight. And look, I'm not the only one to say this. I'm a researcher, so I've done my research. I've looked at medical journals, nursing journals, and midwifery journals, particularly looking at research that's interviewed women pre and postnatally. And the overriding message from this has been that if women are prepared, it really helps to stop the overwhelm. Okay, the overwhelm that can come when these challenges do occur. And this leads me to my second point, which is acceptance. Because by acknowledging that this is a time that's likely to challenge you, it means that you can accept life just the way that it is and just the way that it isn't. Because so often as mums, we fight against how we think things should be. And it completely limits our freedom. It can often lead us down a path of failure, of really, really low self-confidence, self-esteem, which obviously affects our well-being, our bonding with our child. You know, as examples, my baby should be sleeping through the night. I should be enjoying every single moment of parenthood. You know, I shouldn't want to go back to work. My baby should be doing X, Y, and Z, and often it's quite different. You know, in my case, it was, well, I should know how to breastfeed, and I should enjoy it. My reality was something quite different, and it really affected my well-being and the bonding that I had with my child. You know, and for those of you that are here and are pregnant or a new mum or a mum, and you know, things are a little bit different to how you thought they would be, or perhaps life has presented with you some challenges beyond what you thought was possible. Look, just know that you're not alone, okay? And hang in there. It will get a little bit better. There is a beautiful moment just around the corner. I've been asked quite a few times about what really inspired me to write my blog that obviously has sort of gone viral around the world, and I thought I would share that with you. I make, you know, no hidden fact, obviously, that I found that transition into motherhood at times very, very challenging, but there was a particular pivotal moment for me which I guess made me want to sort of reach out to other women. And that was when I went back to work after my first son was born. Now, I went back to work part-time at 12 weeks when after Arjun's birth, and it was my choice. And it was actually something that saved me from postnatal depression, still saves me from postnatal depression. But I will never forget that first day that I went back to work. It had taken me 2 hours to get out of the house, get myself changed, get Arjun ready. I was expressing, so I was juggling expressed milk. I dropped him to daycare. I had to deal with the guilt that I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. And in that basket of shoulds, you know, I shouldn't have felt that way and I shouldn't have wanted to go back to work. So I'm dealing with all of these emotions and I'm late for work. Now I work in research at a place called the Human Potential Centre. And so I walked into a room full of colleagues who, for me, you know, they're high-end athletes, many of them, and I felt they were this big, brown. They were talking about all the marathons that they had run over summer. And this is sort of how I went back to work. So I rocked in, 12 weeks after giving birth. I've obviously gone up a size. I'm wearing pregnancy pants with the elastic up to here. I've got a breastfeeding top on, breastfeeding bra. I've got all my expressing kit, which I have no idea how to handle with at work. So I've got a nappy bag because that's the only thing big enough to fit all my stuff. I've got my, sterilizer in the other hand. And I walk into this room full of people and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I can't do this. And my confidence was at pretty rock bottom because I'd had a nightmare breastfeeding my child, and as far as I was concerned, well, that's the very purpose I'm put on earth to do is feed my child, and I teach the importance of breastfeeding. And I thought, if I feel like this, surely I'm not the only woman to feel like this. And it wasn't about the going back to work. That's just what solidified it for me in terms of trying to find myself again after giving birth. In all my years of experience in working with women and their health and their nutrition, how we feel about our bodies has very little to do with how we look. It has a huge amount to do with the energy that we have, the control that we feel we have around our food choices. Food is the very essence of life, and we forget how much of a significant difference it can help us with what we're dealing with. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just what we're dealing with after life with a baby. So I'm going to talk about the two most significant physiological challenges. The first is your hormone changes. Now, for those of you that are pregnant or have had a baby, this won't be new to you in terms of the hormone changes, right? When you're pregnant, your body is pumped full of estrogen and progesterone. As soon as you give birth, your placenta is a hormone factory all on its own. And as soon as that's expelled, which takes about half an hour to an hour after you give birth, it takes with it all of those hormones which have been pumping through your body for 9 months. And the process for those hormones to withdraw is about 24 to 48 hours, which of course is about the same time that you're being smacked with incredible fatigue after just giving birth. And you're going to feel this. Okay? You are actually going to feel that withdrawal of hormones. Often you might not realise it though, and this is called the baby blues. It affects between 80 to 90% of women. So there's maybe 10% that don't, okay, or don't feel it as much. That process is still happening. Now, prior to having my first son, I knew this, but I didn't know what it would look like for me. And I just totally forgot at the time, quite frankly. But I thought I would share that with you so that you had an idea of how that actually looked like in real life. Now, I felt this hormone withdrawal after both my children. The effects were the same. The only difference the second time round was I was more prepared. So for me, it hit on about the morning of day 3, and I remember my husband coming into the hospital, and I just took one look at him and just burst into tears. And put myself in the shower, and I thought that might help. And I looked down at my broken body that was leaking fluid in places I didn't know it could leak fluid, and my squishy, lumpy, empty belly, and all I felt was an overwhelming sense of sadness. And I was like, but I've got a child. Why am I feeling so sad? And in the end, I was crying because I was crying, and I didn't know why I was crying. Okay, and it's completely normal. As I said, the only difference was the second time round was that when I was crying, I was like, okay, I'm crying, and it's okay that I'm crying, and I could just ride through it, okay? And there are some things that you can do that'll really help through this process. You know, food is medicine, okay? Food is going to give you the energy that you need to recover after birth. Food is going to help you cope with that hormone withdrawal. You have a hormone called serotonin. Most of you will have probably known about that. It's the same hormone that's released when you do exercise. Now, 80% of your body's serotonin levels is produced in your gut. Okay? So having good food after you give birth is absolutely paramount. You need your gut functioning properly so that you get the most release of serotonin as possible. Okay, so after giving birth, you want to reduce foods that are potentially going to irritate your gut. Unfortunately, they tend to be the foods that you're either given in hospital or given from very well-meaning visitors. Sugar, caffeine, very refined carbohydrate. Okay, all of that is going to make your gut pretty unhappy. Other foods that will really help is obviously sort of protein, iron, good fats, okay, and keeping your fluids up. The other point I've got up there is call someone, by the way. That really helped me just to know that I wasn't alone. And do you know what? For everyone in this room, call me. I'm busy, but I'm not busy enough to help someone going through that, all right? My last point up there is to get some fresh air. Again, this was something that I didn't do after the birth of my first son. I was in hospital. I think I stayed in hospital for like 3 or 4 days. Fresh air is going to make a huge difference for that release of serotonin. Yeah. So the other major hormone change that happens straight after you give birth is obviously you become a milk machine. So your placenta, which, you know, when it's released, that's actually what kickstarts your milk production. Something that you may not know is that by the end of your second trimester, your milk duct system is actually fully developed. That means in the event that your baby comes prematurely, you're able to feed them. And it's the progesterone that's produced from your placenta which stops your milk obviously being produced when you're pregnant. So as soon as that placenta is expelled, your milk system starts, along with the release of a hormone called prolactin and oxytocin. And it's prolactin which is the main hormone responsible for your producing your milk. And it's prolactin which uptakes the glucose and the fats and the proteins, which obviously you're consuming, to make your milk supply. So again, you can see how important it is to get good food in those days after giving birth. It's actually paramount. And being a mum and having gone through that, I know it's not always easy. But if you know that it's a time to really focus on your nutrition and you know it's a time that could make such a huge difference, then it's worth, you know, fighting for a little bit. As a nutritionist and as someone that struggled to breastfeed, I do want to make a point about colostrum. It is what they call liquid gold, and it's worth fighting for. And as I said, like I've coped with some horrendous pain breastfeeding my children, so I know how difficult it can be. That colostrum, it's going to line your baby's gut. It's going to give them all the immunoglobulins that they need for their own immune system to fight strong, okay? And that's why they push it so much. But you do have to be realistic, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But I just wanted to explain to you a little bit why the colostrum is so important. I've got some nutrients up there which are really going to help with your milk supply. You know, it takes an awful lot of energy for your body to be producing milk. In those first 3 days, obviously, that's when your baby's trying to bring it in the most. So your B vitamins are actually responsible for the energy transfer in your cells. So getting foods with lots of B vitamins in them, it's really going to help that milk production. Along obviously with your iron, and we tend to find that women are quite low in iron after giving birth, and you've got to remember your postpartum bleeding will last between sort of 3 to 6 weeks, so you're losing a significant amount of iron during that time. The other nutrients that I've got up there is oats and linseeds. So when you're really struggling to bring your milk in, those are nutrients which are quite important and really helpful. It's never like a fixed science though, and I definitely know for some women, they can fight as much as possible, and for whatever reason, you're not able to breastfeed. And you can see now with all those mixture of hormones, any one of those hormones that for whatever reason has not been released properly, that's going to affect it. I just thought I'd touch on windy babies because this is almost every second day I get a mum asking me to help them with windy babies. What I can say is that there's definitely nutrients that will cause more wind in your baby than others, particularly around dairy and unfortunately vegetables. What I would say though is that be really careful about stripping everything out of your diet. Normally by the time mums have come to me, they've taken almost everything they can think of out of their diet. And I totally get it's like pure desperation. But given what you're up against post-birth as a mum, you need the most amount of nutrients possible. So when you strip everything out of your diet, it's almost going to work counterproductive because you don't know which one of those nutrients is potentially causing the wind, and it means that you're really suffering as well. So for yourselves or anyone you know that is struggling with a windy baby, really encourage them to actually get some proper qualified advice around that before they start taking things out of their diet. So that's the science. Okay, so the reality of breastfeeding. As I said, for me, this was hands down the most challenging part, and well, now I'm not breastfeeding obviously, but the most challenging aspect of having a new baby. I've just popped some photos up there. I don't know what your images are in your mind of what breastfeeding looks like. For me, that kind of signifies it a little bit. I particularly like this one. I never dreamed when I had 2 children that obviously the first one would want to get in under the cover, as well as I'm trying to breastfeed, my newborn. What I can say to you as someone that's really struggled to breastfeed is, in that camp of shoulds, often we go down, well, I should be breastfeeding for 6 months or a year. When you're struggling like that and it's every single feed, 6 months or a year seems like the ultra marathon. That's just never going to happen. So don't worry about 6 months or a year, just worry about the next feed. And every single feed that you can get into your baby will be deemed a bonus. And you know what? There's something so much more important than breast milk, and that's the bonding you have with your child. And as a nutritionist and someone qualified in this area, I would say that to you, is that, all the breast milk in the world is not going to replace the bonding that you have with your child. And so if it's not working, try something new or get some advice on it, because your well-being and your baby's well-being is so much more important. I did just think I would bring along a few things that I have personally found helpful with breastfeeding. I'm not endorsed by any of these products or companies, but I just thought I'd share them with you for those that are pregnant in the room. So, breastfeeding pillow. It's worth investing in. Okay, we actually call this the flying saucer because this is how I would walk around the house most of the day when I was feeding. Just boobs out, walking around the house. But, sexy as hell, right? But it's worth investing in, okay? We actually got this one from Trade Me. I got it because it had a thing on the back. Because you're in these puppies for like 10 hours a day, right? So get a good one. For those of you that, don't really want your boobs out, I'm not one of them, something like this, which is a cover that actually has the wire in it, really, really helpful, because instead of, like completely fumbling around, you can kind of see what you're doing a little bit. Again, this was about $20 from an online store, very well worth it. These puppies, gold, pure gold. Wouldn't mind having shares in this company, I don't think. If you haven't found them, get them, okay? They're gel pads. They are a little bit expensive, like $20, but I tend to find, you might only need 2 or 3 packs, and you can keep them, in the fridge and reuse them again, but they will save your nipples pretty much. Yeah, actually I can give that one away at the end. My only other little tip is these. Very well worth it. Event shields. Plastic, I think they're about $30. I discovered, and I did this with both children, but I discovered it a lot later, my first time around, was that if you're struggling to breastfeed and your nipples are quite raw and bleeding and awful, I don't know about you guys, but for me the shower was my sanity place. Cracked raw nipples and a shower don't really go together. So I was distraught that I couldn't have my one, sanity in the day. Wear a bra, pop these inside the bra, stand inside the shower. Peace is restored to the world. So those are well worth it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the second significant physiological challenge that occurs after. So fatigue is clinically defined as an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, which leads to a decreased capacity to do physical and mental work. Now, I've put that photo up there. That was, I think, my first son was about 2 weeks old. It's an in situ photo. I think you might have taken that. But to me, that very much depicts the fatigue of the newborn days. I would have just fed my child, flopped on the couch, and given it to my husband's mum. Notice I said it then. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's very, well documented, and it's not a hidden secret that you're going to be tired after giving birth. And that fatigue obviously comes from the recovery of birth, the fact that you're trying to produce milk continuously, and of course the decreased number of hours sleep you get a night and the broken amount of sleep. It's thought and researched really that the fatigue is going to last up until about 19 to 20 months in most cases, which by the way is about when you have baby number 2, and so if you do the maths with multiple children and how many years, okay, probably one of the points up there which is quite important is the impact that it's going to have on your well-being though. And I'm just about to talk about that. So for those of you here that are pregnant or haven't had children yet, you may be like me, which is when I was pregnant for the first time, everyone said to me, oh my gosh, enjoy your sleep because it'll never ever ever be the same again, and I'd get so annoyed at them about that. By the way, it's really true. But just remember my point at the beginning, okay, about being prepared. Because if you are prepared for this, and actually this is to quote a research article that I read, if women are prepared for the fatigue that is going to come, it means that they are going to be empowered and less likely to feel guilty about asking for help when they are fatigued. Okay? You don't have to be a superwoman. I tried to be superwoman after my first. It didn't work out, too well. My next point, if you take nothing else away from tonight, then I will have done my job. Okay, why am I talking about fatigue so much? Fatigue and feeding are completely linked. This is for all animals, humans included. Fatigue has a profound impact on your hormone system. I'll say that again. Fatigue has a profound impact on your hormone system. So I'm going to introduce you to 3 hormones there. Leptin, ghrelin and insulin. All 3 are affected by sleep deprivation. Okay? Remember how fatigued you're potentially going to be over the number of years after giving birth. So leptin is what we call your satiety hormone. It's actually produced by your fat cells. It's responsible for regulating your energy balance. It gives you that feeling of fullness. This actually decreases with sleep deprivation. Ghrelin, on the other hand, is what we call your hunger hormone. It's produced again in your gut. It sends a message to your brain that says you're hungry. This increases with sleep deprivation. Insulin is what we call your blood sugar hormone. It's responsible for the uptake of glucose into your cells. Okay? Keeps your blood sugars nice and stable. With sleep deprivation, in fact, with one night, and this is proved in clinical studies, one night of sleep deprivation, it increases your insulin resistance. I actually don't know how many, nights it takes for, massive insulin resistance. I'm trying to think of the 20 months of sleep deprivation, but we'll just park that to one side, right? Point is, you're going to have an increased insulin resistance. What does that mean? It means your body responds to insulin a lot less, and when your body is producing insulin, and particularly if it's your insulin resistance is high, it effectively cuts off your fat burning mechanisms. Your body is either uptaking glucose or it's oxidizing fat. So let me just summarize all of that. You have a baby, you're exhausted, you've got all of the hormone withdrawal going on, and then you get whacked with this, okay? You're all of a sudden feeling more hungry, you have a decreased sense of, fullness, and because you're exhausted, you really want high energy, high sugary foods, which your body has very little ability to deal with. Awesome, right? Absolutely awesome. Knowledge is power, okay? And, sometimes knowing this, I hope, is going to be helpful. It's not because you don't have a lack of self-control, okay? It's because of this huge hormonal shift that's going on in your body, okay? It's not because, you're not strict enough or you're not good enough that you're not able to make good food choices. This is what you're dealing with. Oh, and I think I forgot, you're looking after a little human being as well, okay? Just as a minor point. So what can you do, okay? Food is medicine. Food is really going to help you deal with what you're up against. So here are some of my practical points around that. Because you know the hormone changes that you're up against, you definitely have less wriggle room with some of those foods like sugar and refined carbohydrate. Okay? It's not to say that you're not human beings, but that old myth of, oh, I'm breastfeeding and I can eat whatever I want, you really can't, okay? And it's got nothing to do with what body shape you are, because this is going to happen, okay? Regardless of what body size you are. You can't stop that hormone change unless you sleep for 8 to 10 hours a night, right? Yeah. Keep your sugar down as much as possible. Most of you who have been following me, that is one of my overriding messages. I'm not saying cut it out completely. I think you need to be realistic with that. Plan for bonus sleep. This is probably more of one of my tips as being a mum. Sleep is really going to help your body get back to that level of homeostasis. And I totally get how hard it can be. So again, remember my point about being prepared and putting some things in place. It might be that, on a Saturday night, it's hubby that gets up to the baby, brings the baby into you, you feed, he takes him back. Just one night, Often in those first few weeks, you get people wanting to visit all the time. Awesome. They can come in, they can take the baby out in the pram for 2 hours and you can sleep. They're not allowed back for 2 hours, okay? You don't have to entertain them, yeah? Plan for bonus sleep. My husband still helps to get up with feeds for me in the middle of the night. It makes such a big difference, yeah. And that last point, be kind to yourselves, okay? This is what you're dealing with, yeah? This is why I think it's so hard when we get bombarded with all these images on social media about what we should look like. It doesn't show you what's going on inside. It doesn't show, how much, fatigue is affecting your body. All you see is what you think you should look like. So weight loss. For those of you that have scales at home, could you do me a favour tonight? Maybe tomorrow, because it'll be quite late when you get home tonight. Could you take those scales and could you ceremoniously throw them against something? Yeah. Or just put them in the bin. And please never buy them again, okay? Because weight is absolutely the last thing you should be focusing on, okay? Look at what you're up against. you've got to focus on recovering from birth. Okay? You've got to focus on getting good nutrients into your body to help you combat some of those hormonal changes. Weight doesn't mean anything unless you get that stuff right. Yeah? And you're producing milk and you're bleeding for 6 weeks and you've got hormones running through your body. Your weight on your scales is no reflection to how healthy you are. Yeah? So please throw them out and don't worry about them. You've definitely got to start on getting your homeostasis right first, and it will be different for everyone. You know, after my first son, he woke twice in the night for 8 months. Okay? It took me about that time, when he was actually starting to sleep for a lot longer, did I feel like my body was somewhat back to a degree of normality. It took me a little bit less the second time round. And the difference, because I was kinder to myself, you know, I gave myself time. And by the way, I'm still not back to normal. I just slightly more normal than post-birth. Yep. And I'm not going to talk too much about exercise tonight, but I do get asked about that a lot, and I'd put that in the same camp. You know, you've got to focus on repairing your body first. Exercise will come, okay? And exercise is a stress to the body. It can really help, but it can also be a stress. Yeah. Okay. So you know now how important it is to nourish from the inside out and the difference that good food can make. But how do you do that when half the time you're in survival mode? You know, when days are good, great. But, you know, with children, they throw variables at you that, you know, you just can't control. So my tips to really thrive during this time and also obviously after the newborn days is to set yourself a very realistic goal. We're quite funny as human beings, and I tend to find that if we set ourselves huge, you know, goals of, well, I'm going to be, you know, perfect nutrition angels for 12 weeks after my baby's born, as soon as that doesn't happen, it's like, what's the point? Okay, I've had chocolate at 5 o'clock, it's all over. Yeah? Imagine if your child said that to you, hey mum, I've had chocolate at 5 o'clock. Would you punish them for weeks and weeks and weeks on end? Would you make them feel terrible and like, you know, this much in their self-esteem? No, but we do that to ourselves. We're crazy, right? Yeah. So, one good meal a day. Just focus on that. Okay, and I say a meal with some care, because obviously in the newborn days, meals don't always happen. It's often snacks and food here and food there. If you can have one point in the day, it might be 10 o'clock at night, where you do sit down to eat, preferably uninterrupted for 10 minutes, it will make a huge difference to your gut and your digestive system. As well as your sanity, okay? And when I say meal, it could be, you know, avocado on whole grain toast or something. It doesn't have to be, a roast in the oven, but one good meal a day. And do you know what? If you do more, awesome. And if you set yourself that goal of one good meal a day, chances are you probably will do more. Yeah. So when days do turn pear-shaped, even long after the newborn days, one good meal a day. And then I have what I call my magical 3. So ideally, this would be your next step, okay? Breakfast every day. Green leafy vegetables once a day, every day. Good fats once a day, every day. Again, if you do more, awesome. But if you have this as a goal, it's really going to help you achieve some of those points that I've talked about earlier, okay? Breakfast, why? Kickstarts your metabolism, okay? Your metabolism is, running pretty low because of all the hormonal changes, so you need something to help that, okay? My general rule is something is better than nothing, although some of you, those really, really refined breakfast cereals, I'd probably try and steer clear of, only because it's not going to help your insulin or your insulin resistance. Green leafy vegetables, really important for fibre, really important in terms of their nutrients, and they also contain a lot of phytochemicals, which is really going to help with your immune system and keep your gut really happy. Good fats, Your body needs fat, okay? I know this is a big bone of contention at the moment, but there's definitely fats out there that we know are good for us, okay? Fat is not going to produce an insulin response, which is really, really important post-birth, okay? It's also really going to help with your brain function and your overall mood. So good fats once a day. Just a final note from me, which is probably most important. You know, doing what's right for you and your family is the most important thing. And the only thing that I found the difference between my first and second child was I had more confidence at doing this. You know, we've made choices as parents which potentially people would see as outside, you know, the realm of norm, you know. My first child is in daycare 5 days a week. When I first had, you know, both of them at home, the first 3 days, it was a long weekend, I turned around and I said to my husband, I can't do this. Can we please have him in for 5 days a week? I was working, okay? Does that make me a bad mother? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that, but it's what worked for us. We don't have a huge amount of extended family around to help us. So in those first 12 weeks, we had a nanny come and help us on a Saturday, help us with our 2-year-old. It gave me a little bit of chance for sleep, a little bit of chance to bond with my newborn, okay? Because you know what, everyone will have a judgment, everyone will have an opinion, everyone will have some advice, myself included. But you know what, at 3 a.m, when you've got a hungry, screaming baby and you're exhausted, none of that matters, okay? None of that matters at all. So do what works for you and your family, even if you don't tell anyone, okay? And don't forget, you're amazing, absolutely amazing. You know what women put themselves through to be a mum, to carry a child, to birth a child? Doesn't matter what size you are, really. You're absolutely amazing. And that's it from me. Before I finish, I do just want to give a few thank yous. Thank you to the wonderful Hibiscus Coast Parent Centre for having me come and speak. I was really excited to be able to do this. Thank you to all of you for coming here. I know it's a cold winter night and you've left your homes and your families and your kids to come and be here and also to support the Hibiscus Coast Parent Centre, so thank you. I'd really like to thank my husband at the back, who's my partner in crime for all of this. And there's some of you here as well who have definitely helped me through the newborn days and to be a mum, so thank you for that. And of course, thank you to my 2 babies who are tucked away in bed because they're my inspiration and they give, you know, without them I wouldn't be a mum. So yeah, that's it from me.